Hey Washington Fish Questers, Blake here. I'm joining you from a fairly unknown ice fishing lake. However, it's sort of academic. I'm pretty sure within 5 years this lake will probably have 5 times, maybe 10 times as many people on it, just as knowledge spreads to the internet. Which brings me to spot burning. As a YouTuber specifically, I'm not talking about forums and maps and things of that nature. So if you're unfamiliar, spot burning is basically when you have a fishing hole and you tell it to a lot of people, and formally only a handful of people knew about the hole, and then a lot of people come to the hole. That's known as spot burning in fishing. As a YouTuber, I've done a lot of collabs this last year. I came to learn that there are YouTubers who literally don't believe in spot burning, or at least they don't think it's damaging in any way. They'll say wherever they are. And then there's another end of the spectrum where they'll never say where they are. Even if it's in a fairly, let's say like a big body of water that a lot of people know about. So I'm just telling you that because it's a spectrum, and I'd say 90% of YouTubers are somewhere in the middle. And that brings me to discussing what ethical considerations, if any, do I as a YouTuber or any other YouTubers watching, what should we take into consideration when it comes to spot burning? Before we do that, let's discuss the pros and cons.
Well, I can tell you the con for getting your external microphone is that half your video gets blown out from high winds. So I'm going to be cutting back and forth from this bench back to the lake throughout the rest of the video. Regarding the pros, though, of spot burning, if any, is a big pro would be, aren't we here to get people out as YouTube hosts? That's kind of what we want to do, is get people out on the water. So you're basically telling them a great spot to go. Whether it remains a great spot is arguable, but I'd say that's a pro. You're just giving people more locations to go. I'd say another pro along those same lines is public lands. These are public lands we're telling people to go to, and again, isn't that what they're to be used for? They're the public. So that's another your tax dollars are working, all that. So that's another pro. And then a third pro, which all these pros are debatable, but is transparency. Basically the relationship between you and the audience. I don't even remember where I was at. It was a pretty big body of water, though. I wouldn't consider it spot burning at all. I remember that. But someone said in the video, replied to me, they said, "Oh, this guy's great. Not only is he telling us how to fish, but he's telling us where to go." So again, I think it's probably literally like Westport or something like that. So it's not something I'd consider a spot burn. But that's, if you're a host, at least that's a pro. Being that relationship with the audience, just saying, "Hey, here's where I am. You can have the success too. Exactly right here."
Now for the cons. So the big con, the gigantic con, is what I call paradise lost. So these spots, they might have never ever been put out there to a broader audience, and it could go from having maybe 5 people fish that spot a year to 500. It used to be pristine, now there's litter on the ground. This lake I'm currently on, people fish it, but there's more deer tracks and coyote tracks on the water and blue heron tracks on the water than there are human tracks. There are some human tracks, but there's a lot of animal tracks, Are those what's going to happen to those animals when there's 20 people on this lake every day?
The second con actually goes to the YouTuber, affects them. I'm going to call that trust among the angler community. So, I scout spots, but I also have a lot of people tell me where spots are. If I turn around, if someone trusts me and they tell me, "Hey, here's where to get into a nice salmon or even bluegill or whatever," and I turn around and go onto YouTube and go, "Hey, everybody, right here's where the action is," they should never tell me anything again, because I just blew up their sanctuary, just told the world. So that will affect you, and it doesn't even have to be the person that told you, because everybody else would see that on YouTube and they would kind of at least have an inkling, don't trust that guy. You might notice I don't do a lot of river videos on my channel, and I do fish rivers, not as much as I used to, but I grew up fishing. I grew up fishing the Cowlitz and Blue Creek and that sort of thing. I grew up in Lewis County. I digress. But when I go to a river, I almost always leave the camera in the car, because if I see a couple other vehicles there, and I go down, even if the people know me, it's still a little uneasy, where it's like, why is Blake on a camera? Is he going to blow up our spot? And even if I have no intention of doing that, it's still a little edgy as far as, what's this guy doing? This is my Shangri-La, don't film me, and I totally get that. I do plan to do more river videos, by the way. I'm just saying that's a consideration, is your reputation in the larger angler community, and that's a big con, is you will lose a lot of trust and respect if you go on YouTube and spot burn. That kind of leads me to my third con, which is, I'm going to call it spot equity. So people put in, good anglers, good fisher people, put in a lot of effort to finding a good spot. you know, they'll have days where they just scout for spots. You know, I personally have a rule of I don't really expect to catch fish in a new area until the third time. If I catch them before, great. Sometimes beginner's luck can be a curse, though, because you think you have it dialed in and you're just lucky. But at any rate, people put in months, sometimes years, if it's like steelhead or something, into finding that perfect spot. And then to go around on YouTube and just give it away for free completely undermines that whole value system. So it's a fairness issue. You know, that's like someone put in a lot of work and then you've basically just taken that work and thrown it out the window, you know, and probably ruined that spot. So spot equity, I'd say, is another one, which goes into my, what is this, my last one? Yeah, I think it is. We are not teaching you how to fish as YouTubers. You know, Blake, I mean, like, I'm not teaching you how to fish if I just tell you right where to go. And that might seem like come off a little condescending. It's not intended to. But as I mentioned, good fisher people find their own spots, and they scout to do that, and they learn to read the water. And a lot of us YouTubers, me included, we don't do a great job of that in our videos because it's not, frankly, it's not click enough. You know, I want to call it clickbait, but it's not something you want to click on. Like, hey, here I am reading the river. You know, here I am going through some brambles to see if there's a hole down there. You know, that sort of thing, and then fishing and not getting anything, because that's what a lot of fishing is. You know, we like to demonstrate the big catches and be having a blast all the time. And it's not that it isn't a blast, but it doesn't really translate to video when it's just some guy tromping through the woods. So I'd say that's the number 4 thing is I'll just put this on me as a YouTuber. I can do a lot better job of at least incorporating it into my videos of teaching people how to fish, and not doing that kind of robs the viewer, if you're new to fishing, of learning how to fish, if that makes sense. It's knocking out an entire basic step.
Some things I think as YouTubers we need to take into account when we think, should I say where I am on the YouTube? You know, should I say like where I am on the spot? Is A, the fishery itself? You know, is it a sustaining fishery? Is it a plant and take fishery? So, for instance, I'd usually consider like size of body of water, but you got to use some logic or common sense there. Where, so for instance, Borse Lake, right off of I-5 in Centralia that I grew up fishing, that's a total catch and take pond. You know, they fill it full of trout, people fish them out. You know, in a month or month and a half they're gone. You know, and they plant it in the winter and they plant it in the spring, and that's about it. But that lake is right off of I-5. It's very urbanized for the area, and that's what it's there for, is to go get your limited trout, take them home and eat them, you know. So it's not let's say the converse of that would be a lake of that size in the mountains, that full of wild trout, naturally reproducing. You know, I wouldn't want to go stick a bunch of people on a lake like that, you know. So I would say that's something to consider, just the type of fishery. Can it sustain more pressure than it's currently getting? And then along those lines is the environment. So, and I mean both for people and animal. So some days, as positive as I am about fishing, I'm not proud to be a fisher person. When I go to the side of the bank and it's covered in beer cans and worm cartons and whatever else, and it happens so often, I can't just say, oh, that's only 1% of us. You know, it's more than that, unless there's just one really, really messy dude running around. So there's that, and I say that's both for animal and human, because of course that's not great to have a bunch of like styrofoam laying around in the environment. But at the same time, mentally, when I'm going to try to refresh my brain, and I walk down to a hole and there's a bunch of beer cans and worm cartons, that's not great for me either, you know. Or anybody. So I mean, that's another thing to take into account. I feel like as a YouTuber, if I tell you where a spot is and then it gets trashed, that's sort of on me. I mean, don't get me wrong, personal accountability and all that on the person who actually does it, but they wouldn't have had the vehicle to do it if they didn't know where to do it at. And then I'd say another thing is kind of, I'll call this an infrastructure. That might also not be the proper term, but I do a lot of Westport videos. I think I mentioned that a little bit ago. And to me, Westport is my place where I go to recharge. It's like where my heart is the town of Westport, you know. And it's gotten way more crowded over the years. It's pretty rare I go on the Westport Jetty or the Westport Fisherman's Pier and don't have somebody go, hey, I'm here because I saw one of your videos, you know. And some people hearing that right now probably want to punch me in the face, you know, because it's getting really crowded and everything. Like I said, these things are cyclical. I've seen them come and seen them go on the jetty from the time I've been in high school to now. People just fluctuating, you know, like I say, it gets fished out or it gets too crowded, so people stop coming, then they'll return, all that sort of thing. You know, there'll be a few bad seasons, you know, often naturally occurring, and people will just stop going, the fair weather fishers, you know. So I digress, but those places have the infrastructure. By that I mean, when I'm crab snaring off the Westport Fisherman's Pier, it's a literal pier for fishing, you know. So piers, marinas, things like that, public boat launches. I mean, those are, you know, to me, those are usually fair game as far as that they're there for that. They're there for people to congregate at in large numbers. And I think that brings me to my last one, and that is the community. Another reason I like sending people to Westport is if you're at Westport, you're probably going to spend money in Westport. You're probably going to, you know, go to Little Richard's Donuts or go to Marino's, you know, get some fish and chips, stuff like that. And although I don't have ads on my channel and that sort of thing, I will, well, I won't say shill because I'm getting no money in return, but, you know, I will freely promote those local businesses that I want to see stay open. You know, I want to send people there. So if you're going out to the coast like that, you know, and there's a lot of other places, a lot of other towns, you know, like if I'm fishing at Moses Lake or something like that, you know, there's a lot of great places there, you know, Woody's, Chico's, you know, like I like people to go into those towns and spend money. So to me, that's the fourth consideration, is probably the less of them all, but it actually is commerce. Versus if you're sending out someone into the woods, there's probably no communal gain there. So that's another thing to take into account.
Well, what do you think? Did I leave anything out? Did I leave anything out of my pros or my cons? This is a total thought exercise. I won't be offended by anything you say in the comments section. I'd love to hear from both viewers and YouTubers as well. I want your thoughts on spot burning. I know I try to strive to be more on the secretive side, you know, maybe like 3/4 to the secretive side, unless I'm intentionally sending people to an area. But like I say, it is what it is. We all do it kind of different. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts on spot burning in general. You know, I would say if you know paradise, keep it a secret.
Thanks so much. See you next time on Washington Fish Quest.